And we're live. Good morning. Hi, everybody. We're having such fun here that I almost forgot to hit the live button on the thing. Welcome to the Food Safety Chat. Pull up a chair, join us. We're going to have a fantastic hour of food safety and topics and all kinds of fun stuff. My name is Bryan Armentrout with the Food Leadership Group, and I'm always really happy when I have Jill and Tia with Catalyst on with me. Good morning. How you guys doing today?
Good. Good morning. Great to be here.
Yeah.
So if you're new to the, I'm sorry, Tia, cut you off there. What'd you say?
I was just saying it's Friday.
Yes, it's like we're rocking through February. Spring is just around the corner. It's coming. We're all going to get nice and warm, and it will be nice for sure. But if you're new to the Food Safety Chat, this is an hour where we talk about, guess what, food safety and things related to that. And if you're somebody who's new to the chat, one of the things that we love to do is check in. Let us know where you're at in the world. And hi, Alba. Nice to see you in your pretty profile picture. I am in Loveland, Colorado. And Jill, you are in Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Don't you hate it when people do that?
I was just telling Brian, I get I'm in Minnesota. I get we have, 2 or 3 months of winter left or snow. But we were fortunate this week. We had a couple of days of nice weather. So we had that, we were teased with spring coming. Mm-hmm. And today the feels is minus 13, I think. So I was like, dang, I'm ready for it to be a little warmer, but it's good. This makes me appreciate those nice warm days. So
that's true.
Absolutely. True. Tia, where in the world are you at today? You're always somewhere different.
In Baltimore.
Baltimore. I love the harbor area down there. It's always so cool. We used to live up in Lancaster, and we would go down there every now and then.
Oh yeah, it's a nice area.
Yeah, it is. It is. I like it. And so Tim is here. Thanks for joining us. Kara is here. Oh, Kara is awesome. I love having Kara here. And Steve, welcome, Steve. New face. I don't recognize Steve in Peoria. Nice to see you.
Thanks for joining.
Yes.
One of the things that we love to do here on the chat, and this is something that is super important, and that's looking at your job and how you do things in two main buckets. And the first, of course, is how you perform your tasks and your duties and your knowledge and all these type of things, which is super awesome. But what a lot of people forget is the people side of things is just as important. And Jill and Tia do a wonderful job in their business of coaching and training and helping people be the best that they can be in their role. So I love what you guys do. I see the comments on LinkedIn from people who have taken your courses and worked with you, and you guys are awesome.
Oh, thank you. We love doing it.
We do, right? Because we've been there, and we get that the load is really heavy when you're in food safety and quality. But yet, if we don't take care of our people and their well-being, and not just, gosh, let's do another day, that's not gonna get us through the long haul. So we love being able to help fill that in. How do we take better care of people? Because that's what builds the culture that gets the food safety results we want.
Absolutely. And so one of the things that we do on the chat, everybody, please join us for a ceremonial sip of your favorite beverage. Cheers.
Cheers.
Normally I have coffee, but this morning I'm drinking an energy drink. I'm trying something a little different today, mixing it up.
Right. You have to let us know.
It's Yerba. I got this I love Costco. We were talking about Costco too before we got on here. Costco always had the treasure hunts and the cool little things that you find in Costco. The food safety group there, Craig and the team, they do an amazing job at Costco. One of the things I love about that from the food safety side is their recall program. Everything that you buy there, they track on your card. And if there's a recall for those items, you get a notification from them right away, which is
I love that.
Yeah,
it's using their membership, right? Technology. That's awesome.
Yep, using it for good instead of evil. So it is February, as we were talking about, everyone, and part of February and Q1, if you're working for a company, and we've all been in this boat, is reviews and objectives. Yay! Everybody's favorite topic. It's just when you're on both sides of this, right? There's all kinds of things that need to be taken into consideration. And what we wanted to do today is share some of our experiences, good and bad, from being on kind of both sides of this equation. So as a boss, and also, right, as someone who's being reviewed. And definitely, everybody, as we're going through this, please, let us know in the comments things that you've experienced and tips or tricks that you've seen in your career so far, so we can help each other out as well.
Yeah.
So, so one of the things, Jill and Tia, I wanted to start with here this morning is at the top. And every company, most every company has a vision and mission statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, you read these and it's always word salad. It's, we will be the world changing, dynamic shifting, force to be reckoned with. And it ends up they're making toothpicks or something, right? You're just like, it doesn't
But
matter.
it's aspirational.
Yeah.
Even as a toothpick maker.
It needs to take you, it needs to, yes, this is, those big statements like that look nice on the website, but what do they really do? I mean,
yeah, I think as leaders, it's our job to kind of take that aspirational vision and take your mission and turn it into action steps.
Yeah.
Year over year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard to do, and some organizations struggle. Some leaders struggle with that. But that's a part of our role as leaders: is how do we take that vision, which should be there, right? Like we should have that aspirational pie in the sky, blue sky, beautiful day vision that we are marching towards. But as we think about with performance appraisals and time to put objectives down, it's important to be able to translate that on how are we getting there this year? How are we pushing a little bit farther towards that vision?
Yep, 100%. I totally agree. What's funny about it, and online, there's actually examples. If you look this up, there's actually mission and vision statement generators that make funny ones, because these weird statements of, if you do a Google search on that and have some fun with that, you can come up with some goofy ones.
That's hilarious.
For me, what sticks in my mind is the best example of a vision and mission statement. And right, first of all, what are the definitions? Like, they're kind of nebulous in between the two. Yeah. But I worked for a company, and it was a dairy company. We had this big meeting, and they unveiled their mission statement. And the mission statement was, we're going to be the largest dairy company in our field, and we're going to triple sales in 3 years. And everybody in the crowd went, whoa, exactly like Tia did. Mm-hmm. And this at the time was in a small company. And everybody's like, holy moly. And the owner of the company got up and said, we're doing this in 5 years. We will do this in 5 years. And they pushed it, and they made sure that stayed in front of everybody. I remember there was an opportunity that came up at one point to buy, of all things, a hot dog company. And the people who brought it forward were like, oh yeah, we can put cheese in the hot dogs. And the owner of the company is like, what are you doing? Read this again, because evidently you don't understand it. This has nothing to do with this. You bring me a bonehead idea like this again, you don't understand, and you shouldn't be here. And kept it right on track. And it was, what I loved about that is that was a statement then that could be translated in, as you said, Tia, all the areas of the organization. Mm-hmm. And the operations group understood what they need to do, and the sales group understood what they needed to do, right? It's like, all right, we need to go out and meet this. And they absolutely killed it. They did it in 3 years instead of 5.
That's awesome.
And it was an example of a good one from my viewpoint, because instead of being this mushy, undefinable thing, it was very tactical and very well understood. Yeah. And I think that came about because it was a privately held company, and the owner of the company was like, this is what we're doing. Versus, as we see a lot of times, if things are done by committee, they tend to get diluted out.
Yeah, they're wishy-washy, aren't they?
Yeah. You're like, we don't want to go too far. We don't want to go too far. And mm-hmm. to your point then, Tia, is you have that statement, and then it goes to the next level. So we'll say operations. Mm-hmm. And then within operations, you have procurement and logistics and QA and the plants and all these guys. And then you got to try and link these things up. And that's the real challenge, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a challenge for us to be able to link all of these different functions to a mission or to a vision.
Yeah. And I think it even comes from when it's handed down from on high. Mm-hmm. So while I love the idea of the North Star, which I think helps us then with the later steps. So it's still effective to say, this is where we want to go as an organization, but how we get there, like like, how do we include more people? Because especially as we talk about people engagement and culture, like when we just hand down from on high, then it's like, well, you didn't include me in the beginning, so why do you want to include me now? Instead, if we shift that and we're like, okay, let's talk about how do we get to that if it's tripling our sales in 5 years, like what are the parts that we all see so we can collectively come to alignment so that this actually happens.
And I think it's about self-awareness too, that we don't have all the answers, right? Like just because you are responsible for or have this vision, right? Because either I own the company or I lead the company and you're creating this vision for the organization, it doesn't mean you have all the answers on how you get there. And so leaning on the people that you have, right, that have the expertise, right, in operations, that have the expertise in sales, that have the expertise in marketing, it's important for you to lean on those people because, you know, we don't know it all, right? And having that self-awareness is key.
Yep, we're all specialists, right? We deep dive into our area of expertise. And a couple of points that I wanted to call out, Jill, that you made that I don't know if I was explicit on is in that mission statement that I was talking about. That was unveiled at a large company meeting. All of the leaders of the company went to this meeting and they unveiled that statement. And to your point, the senior leadership in the company said, this is what this means. And we all had chance, you know, to then, you know, talk with our colleagues that we may not see all the time. And what does this mean to our department? And what was great about this, because part of it in food safety and quality is our objectives are negative. Don't have a recall. But what was cool about that is I could link that, because if we have a recall, that's going to bring down sales and that's not going to get us to the objective that we want. This is going to cost the company millions of dollars if we do that. And I love that and being able to do that.
And I love that you bring that up because so often, right, we are seen as like, we're just trying to problem solve. But when we can actually show like, it's just how we present it, isn't it? It's reframing the conversation to say, it's not always negative, but for us to get to that objective, here's a gap we have, but here's how we fill it.
Yes.
That reframe makes all the difference versus, well, we'll never get there because what if we have a big recall and we don't have this in place and that in place? And
we talk with our business owners, our entrepreneurs that we work with all the time, just exactly what Jill's talking about. How can food safety enable your growth? You know, food safety should enable that organization to be able to triple their size, you know, so they can get in other markets or that they can be in other spaces or, you know, whatever that happens to be. Food safety is an enabler for your business to get to those goals. And so, you know, I love the way Jill put it. It's about reframing how we think about food safety. It's reframing even how we think about quality, right? Because quality will get you there and is an enabler for your organization.
Exactly. In quality, and I've said this, if you're on the chat in the past, you've heard me say this, quality is, we're like the conscience of the organization. We're the group that helps determine what's good, bad, right, wrong, pass, fail, all of these type of things. And that ties directly into what we're talking about today with the vision and mission statement. We're helping to define the morality of the company.
Definitely.
Yeah, agreed.
So with these objectives, so you need a solid mission and vision statement for the company. Oh, we were laughing about this earlier. I need some more room. And then it comes down to the operations. And then let's say that you're in charge of quality. Now you're like, okay, how do I do this for my team? And I have a statement here that I've used a lot in my career. And I'd be very curious, Jill and T, to see what you think of this and people who are listening as well, is when I create objectives, I would sit down with my teams. And as Tim says here, listening to your team is critical, just like the leadership of the company. I can't do this in a vacuum. If I just come down like Moses from high with the tablet of the objectives for the year and give them to the team, they're going to be like, well, okay, I'm probably missing something. There's something that needs to be done that I'm missing. But there's a statement when I'm creating these, when I would meet with the team to start figuring out our objectives for the year, which is our goals and our objectives of what we're putting on are not our job description. These are the things that we're doing to move the company forward. Your job is your job. And this is a huge tell on resumes when I would look at resumes. So this is a good people tip for everyone. if I read a resume, and so I hired, as a VP, I, would mainly focus on hiring my directors, and then they would hire their team, and I would, of course, have input in that. But the first pass on the directors would come to me. And if I read through their resume and it was just a reformatted job description, it's like, well, as director of so-and-so, I execute this and I execute that and I lead my team. And yeah, I know. What did you do?
Right.
How did you improve quality? How did you reduce complaints? How did you save the company money? How did you improve customer satisfaction? Tell me what you did with that. And most people can't do that, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
So that's the same thing with your objectives. So what are the big projects this year that we want to do? We want to reduce complaints by 15%. We want to improve the cost of non-quality in our facilities by $1 million. What do you want to do to make things better? That's your objective.
Yeah. And how is it tied to that greater vision, right? And greater mission? Because that's really when you start to connect, okay, how am I my job, how does that play into where we're going into the future? And what are the action steps, which are really your objectives and ultimately your accomplishments and your results? What are those action steps I'm going to take to impact that, to ensure that we continue to push the company towards that vision?
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, as you've talked about, Bryan, like as leaders, they hire us to do more than just do the maintenance work.
Right.
So even when we talk about broader organizational objectives, for example, I remember a few times where we would have goals and they would just be like, well, there's a food safety element here. Like, maybe it's new product launches. Yes, obviously we need to be part of that process, but it doesn't have an element of improving something related to food safety necessarily. And so I think as leaders, it's differentiating between part of the company moving forward are we doing just maintenance of the current programs? Are there food safety or quality elements that need to be improved? And how do they get in to that improvement process then? To be like, where in the organization does that fit so that everybody understands, like, gosh, if we're reducing, if we're growing our sales and we need a better recall process, like how does that make it onto the list so that everybody understands versus you guys just need to be available and work on it on the side?
Yes, yes. Jill, you're really talking about that integration of food safety, right? Because, many times, and, I'm really curious too, like people that's listening in, have you been in that situation where food safety and quality, we're kind of like on the side and we're like, like exactly what you're saying. We'll call you when we're needed. Oh, something's coming up. We need you to create a HACCP plan, or, oh, there's an inspection coming. We need you to handle this. But you're really not integrated into the overall vision. You're not integrated into the overall objectives. You're really not working on continuous improvement. It honestly feels like you're firefighting every single day because people are just bringing into you issues versus working through like what are our true objectives and how does food safety enable that growth, enable that movement.
Right. And what needs to grow in food safety and quality to better enable those things.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Very good points, because like it or not, and this is human nature, people will bring us their problems and then walk away. And if we take them, shame on us. We had a quality problem. What? What do you mean we had a quality problem? You made the product. You didn't make it to spec. Let's figure out why that happened. I can assist with that. But to simply say we had a quality problem and then walk away is not acceptable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really around building in, those processes, right? Like how do people bring up issues and how do you make sure that they have that ownership where, I'm responsible for my line and I'm responsible if we're talking about a facility, right? Like I'm responsible for my line. I'm responsible for the food safety and the quality of all the products coming off of my line. So if something comes up and it's like, oh, I see this issue or something is cracking or the color is not right, I need to go and get resources to help me figure out how to fix it. Because I'm ultimately responsible for my line. So, I mean, that's a mind shift, right? That's a mind shift and really also plays to the integration of food safety and quality, because when you integrate it into operations or into maintenance and, fill in the blank, then they feel that ownership of that piece of food safety, that piece of quality.
right? And ownership is food safety culture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. So with the objectives, so the mission and vision, your department objectives, and then you're meeting with your team and deciding on what it is that everybody needs to be working on. The next big failure is don't just put that in a drawer and forget about it. And then at the end of the year go, oh crap, we didn't do any of our objectives. Ideally, what I would do, and this is just my example, everybody's different, is we would have a weekly meeting and I had a giant whiteboard put up in my office. And I used some like graphics tape and created all these little boxes and stuff. And we put across the top all the objectives and then down the side, everybody. And then this meeting was not about the tactical, okay, I'm going to this plant this week or this. This meeting was specifically to say, okay, what are we doing this week to work on these objectives? Mm-hmm. If the answer was no, we've got this other thing going on, we're not, okay, that's fine, right? But we'll bring it up next week. And then I would have one-on-one quarterly meetings specifically for those objectives for that person and say, okay, how are we doing on this project? And in these, I always built into this, there was always a line item for training. It's like, okay, what new thing do you want to learn? Mm-hmm. So Joe, what do you want to put in your objectives? Well, I'd really love to become a Six Sigma black belt. Awesome, good. And I would set aside money and let the person decide what training that they wanted to do. Because it could be somebody in my department was like, I'm really thinking about going down the operations side and becoming a plant manager. Okay, well, what does that look like for you? Yeah. And then we would start developing that out. And it was a great way to build that in. So then I would meet every quarter and we would go over those. And my rule was by the time the annual review came around, generally my annual reviews were about 15 minutes because there was nothing on there that they didn't know already. It's like, okay, well, let's go through this. You're doing this and you're okay, great. And here you go. And they, okay, there's a little spot here in the bottom where you can put in additional comments. You want to say anything? And I was like, nah, I'm okay. All right, good. Here you go. Done.
Yeah.
Opposite
it's not always like that, is it?
No, because if your team member comes into the review and everything you're saying is a complete surprise, guess what? You failed as a boss.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, it's funny because just the other day we had a client who was talking about some things going on at work. And one of them was in my review, this is what my boss told me. And I'm like, is that the first time you heard that? Yes. And I was like, wow, you've just told me a lot about the collaboration, the culture, and actually about the maturity of your leader just by that one thing.
Yes, absolutely. And I love too, Bryan, what you're saying on keeping the objective front of mind, because that will also help you have those conversations with your leader on like, these are the things that I'm focusing on because we said these are the top priorities, and that will help you say no. Yeah. Right. You have to say no to some things that just aren't fitting in the top objectives this year. Beautiful and point. You saying, this isn't really on my top objectives. Let's go talk with my manager, your manager, to talk about, do we need to move some things around, right? Or, hey, manager, I turned down this to work on because I'm really focusing on these objectives. Does that still make sense? Is that still the right direction we want to go in? It helps you have those conversations, stay ahead of things, and really prevent that burnout, right? Where you're not piling everything up on top of you. You're really focusing on, okay, what are my main objectives that I need to make sure that I do, and keeping that alignment through the year.
Well, and I think on top of that, I'm not sure if anyone's experienced this, right? That would be ideally how it works. But so often, I think people encounter where people are like, yep, that's still your priority, but this all needs to get done.
Yeah.
And I think that probably comes up more often than we would like. And sometimes I believe when we feel like we're not being heard from our leader, when we share that with them, and they're like, yep, just get it all done. We think, gosh, should we even be telling them anymore? Like after a while, you're like, if I keep saying there's more, or I'm not sure which parts, can we shift priorities? Sometimes people are like, yeah, I just don't tell them anymore.
Yeah.
And I think, gosh, you have to keep communicating and try different ways, because if they don't hear you, it's kind of like the squeaky wheel. And I'm not promoting being squeaky wheels, but if you're not able to share and communicate like how it's impacting your work, your life, your relationships,
yes,
that may not be able to drive enough change. And so maybe leaning in a little bit differently to say, gosh, if I try and do all of this, here's what happens.
Yeah. There's only so many hours in the week. And I don't care if you work 8 hours a day or 20 hours a day, there's still only so many hours and only so many things that get done. And you have to choose. You can't do everything.
No.
The phrase I used to use with my boss, and I would drill this into my team members as well so they could kick it back on me, is, okay, I can do 5 things well, or I can do 10 things crappy. Which would you like me to do?
Yeah.
And to your point, Jill, if they come back and say, I want all 10 done well. Okay, well, let's talk about how we get there, because I need additional resources to do that then, because it ain't going to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think being open and clear and continuing to communicate is key. You know, I've been in a situation where, it was communicated that our team really needed to be a team of 5. And at that time, we were a team of 2 when it was communicated. And then all of a sudden I found myself being the only person, right? So now I'm a team of 1 myself, and we've already aligned that we probably need 5 people on the team. For me, it was really, and, I went through the same thing of like, oh man, you're trying to do as much as you can. You're trying to, eliminate risk and help people over here that needs help. And, you really get to a point where it's like, I cannot do it all. And then you have to have those real conversations with your manager, with senior leadership, saying that, we know that this takes a team of 5. It's impossible for one person to do it. So this is where I see the largest risk exists. And this is where I'm going to focus my time.
Yeah.
Everything else, unless we want to add more resources and more resources get approved, I cannot focus on these things. And then I had to stick to it, right? Like I couldn't continue to stretch myself like that because mentally, I literally hit a roadblock, right? Like when we talk about being burnt out and overworked, like that was me. So much so that I needed to take a summer off after that. So, like I knew I hit a wall, and it was really rewarding for me, and something that I know, right? Like fingers crossed, I won't find myself in that situation in the future, because I learned where you really have to communicate. This cannot be done with one. It's literally impossible to get all this done with one person. So we have to continue talking, continue aligning. And one thing that I told them is that, this is where I see the risks are. This is what I'm going after. If for whatever reason we find that something else is bubbling up as more of a risk, let's continue to talk about it. We can always shift. We can always be flexible, knowing that we have one person kind of working on something that we know a team of 5 should probably be handling.
Right. And if you're working in quality, this is where things get missed and corners get cut and the risk of a recall goes up. And it's not something that people are doing. It's just because we want to, if it's something that needs to be done, we're going to do our damnedest to try and get it done. But to your point, Tia, there's a burnout point, and you can't, there's a strong element in what we do in food safety and quality of thinking, right? And just sitting back and looking at something and going, if we run this product and then that product, are we really cleaning the allergens out?
Yeah.
Right? If you're not sitting, you're not thinking about those things. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, and with that, right, companies hire us because we bring gifts and talents that others don't have.
Yeah.
And if we're not able to deliver on it, I mean, we don't feel good. They don't get what they need. Yeah. And so, you are worthy. My message is always like, you are worthy to ask for what you need. Because if you're not able to lean into those gifts and talents, we know we are not energized. We are like, that's where the burnout occurs and all those other things. So for you to be able to show up and do your best work, you're worth it. You're worth asking. You're worth the conversation. Remember that.
Yes.
Absolutely. So let me bounce this phrase off of you and see what you guys think. So I'm working in quality. I'm Tia. I'm working hard and really nose to the grindstone. And I think to myself, man, I'm really doing a lot of good stuff. We're working really, really hard. My work speaks for itself. Senior leadership will see this, and I know that promotion's around the corner. True?
Good luck.
You hope that people see it, but in reality, you have to be your advocate. Right. And everyone is busy, nose to the ground working, right? So it's not even malicious, right? It's not even that your manager or that others don't want to notice these things and are deliberately saying, oh, yep, Tia's working, but I'm not going to bring it up so she won't get a promotion, right? No one's saying that. Everyone is just busy, right? So it's important for you to advocate for yourself. It's important for you to speak about the things that you're doing, and that also helps with that alignment piece, right? That people are aligned with the things that you're doing, that people are celebrating the things that you're doing, that you're celebrating the things that you're doing, and the ways you are moving the organization forward. But you have to have that ownership. You have to own speaking about your work and speaking about who you are and how you want to and how you are impacting the organization.
Right. Because we've all been in the situation where we're working hard like this and we're expecting the promotion and good things are going to happen. And then there's that knucklehead that we work with in the, who just walks around the office all day. Hey, everybody, how you doing? Right. And then they get promoted and you're just like, what? How? Right. It's because they're a known element, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those things happen. So you have to be able to communicate your successes, right? And this links back to what we're talking about relative to those objectives. Yeah. Because if you can say, yes, we accomplished this, yes, we're able to reduce complaints, this translated into an additional $3 million in revenue, which guess what? On a 10% profit margin, that's an extra $30 million in sales or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, senior leadership goes, oh, hello, who's this person again? Right? Now,
and I think if we're waiting for someone to notice, we have to remember that as humans, we are wired to be self-absorbed. Right. That is why we have an ego. And while sometimes it serves us well, there are other times it doesn't. And we are all, right, the one who's worried most about like, oh gosh, how's my hair look? Or what does this clothes look like? It's me. It's not G and Bryan. You guys could care less. You're like, whatever, Jill. But I'm the one who's self-absorbed, and so we are all like that naturally. So even when it comes to recognizing others, this is where it really takes that intentional like pause for us to stop and pull our head up so that we're not so self-absorbed to go, gosh, what's happening around me? What are other people doing?
Yeah.
And so that's something that we also have to remember. It's not that we are like so tooting our own horn. It's that we are looking and we are observing, but we also do need to bring it to other people's attention at times because they get into their distracted mode and self-absorbed modes too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that's a very good call out. I'm glad you said that, because what we're not saying here is, oh, I've got to step on other people to advance. No. Right. This is a collaborative process, and senior management wants the most talented, best people. There's tons of roles to fill. There's lots of things that need to be done. So this is something where everyone rises at that occasion. Here's a little behind the scenes thing that we did at a company I used to work for. Is HR, and I love this process. Once a quarter, the senior leadership in the company, we would get together, and every department head was required to bring someone in their department, not physically, but bring someone forward in their department that is doing a fantastic job and talk about that person to the other groups. So if you're working in quality, you're dealing with operations and procurement, but there's lots of other groups you're not talking with a whole lot at that level. You're not talking with sales, you're not talking with marketing. I was, but they weren't. So I was able then to go to this group and say, okay, well, there's a person who works on my team doing fantastic things. Here's what she's doing. Here's the project she's working on. Here's how that impacts your departments. And then they'd be like, oh, I had no idea. And out of that process, somebody who worked for me in the past is now the vice president in charge of quality for a major company. And those type of things that happen just makes you so proud, right? That you were able to maybe in some way help push that person forward a little bit. So.
Yeah, I love that because it also helps other functions see how food safety, from your perspective, right? See how food safety and quality impacts what they're doing. So even times that I've done similar things, it's like, oh, this person is really working on this project. And that enables us to be able to market or be able to sell, right? And sales like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that was connected. It's helping them connect food safety and quality to the work that they're doing. It also serves that, which in turn helps your food safety culture, right?
Right. Yep.
And in theory, as a food safety quality leader, you should be able to pull anybody in your pool to be like, here's someone I want to highlight and share their gift and talents and their contributions. And I'm going to say theory, right? Because we know we're all a work in progress as we're helping people like understand where their contributions are really shining and how to get them into that spot. But I think that's an important part, because if we as a leader are like, ugh, I got this person over here, like our attention should also be over there.
Right. Yeah.
But I think sometimes what we fall trapped to is kind of this place where we're like, wow, I have a high performer, however we define that, and we're going to help them really accelerate.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, we have a whole team over here that has these probably untapped, like, things and potentials and gifts that they can offer us that we haven't leaned into. And so when we're looking at how do we help our whole team accelerate in the organization, sometimes getting 10% extra from this one person isn't where it's at. It's how do I get 5% extra from every single person on the team?
Yeah. Right. Jill, I love exactly what you're saying, because even when we see people where you have a team member that might not be living up to performance, or they might not be doing everything you really want them to do, and it's almost like we leave them out there to tread water, and their head is slowly going, and we're like, are they going to be able to swim? They're going to be able to swim. We might throw some other things at them to see if they can swim. And in reality, we should be trying to, at the moment we see that they're really not treading water, they're really not swimming the way we want them to swim, that should be the moment to say, how do we give them extra support so we can bring them to where we need them to be on the team? And a lot of times we kind of let it sit over that, mainly. And again, it's not malicious. It's just, we're all busy, right? We're all busy, and we hope that everyone can carry their own weight. But when we realize that that's happening out there as leaders, right? And we talk about this, with our programs and at Catalyst, and this is exactly where we help. Where if you have a member that is struggling a little bit and just need a little bit more support, get them the support early, as soon as you recognize it. Because within 6 months, within a year, you're at the point where the organization might feel, oh, they're not a good fit. Or, it's disastrous, where we have to do all this crazy stuff to help support them and burn out the rest of our organization. Start early, target that person, and give them the support that they need the moment you see it.
Yeah, because our job as leaders is to coach people up to their full potential. And that's like the 1-10-100 rule, right? If I invest 1 hour now, it's 1 hour now versus 10 hours later.
Right. Yeah.
Or we coach them out to a place where they can use their gifts and talents better.
Yes.
And so we have to think about, like, which way are we going with people to make sure that it's honoring them and honoring what we need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good point. Well, and part of this too, right, is we've been talking a lot about the high performers and our team members, and sometimes it's not what that person wants to be doing, and it's not a good fit, and they signed up for something that they don't like.
Yes.
The earlier you're able to identify that, and this is where really good objectives and having good structure on this helps you recognize that and say, this isn't working out very well for you. Tell me more about that. Well, yeah, this whole food safety quality thing, this is hard. Yeah. Maybe there's something else. And what else do you like? Maybe there's some other things. Or sometimes the best thing that can be done is, this isn't working, right? And we need to find a new home for you, or you need to pursue other opportunities. And having clear objectives makes that process a whole lot easier, because both sides recognize it.
Yes. And asking, right? Are you able to give it 100%, even though you don't love it, as we work on a plan for where you want to go next or what you want to do next?
Yes.
I think as leaders, we also have to set that bar, because otherwise we kind of let people hang out over there and we're like, ugh, they're not really doing their thing. We all have seen people like that.
Yes.
But instead be like, I get this, just the elephant in the room. I get this isn't really what you love to do. What would it take for you to give it your all while you're here? What would you need?
Yeah. I have a person that used to work for me, and we are really good friends to this day. In a part of our journey when we first met was that she was not a good fit for the role that she was in, or the organization. And one of the things that I did was have that conversation. She knew it. I knew it. And we talked about what type of roles she should apply to, what type of experience she needs. And to this day, we still have those conversations on this is what I want to do. What skills do I need to pick up on? Like, where do I see myself in the future? And it started with us. I mean, and that was in like probably the first 5 months of me even meeting her, where we were having that conversation. And it's a tough conversation to have, right? But really reframing, right? Reframing that conversation and saying that, okay, it's okay. This is not for everyone. Let's figure out where you need to be, whether it's in the organization or outside of the organization. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Right. And that's the challenge, I think, for what we do, because we work in a technical field and we're analytical people and we like numbers, these type of things, but we're people. Because part of this too is if somebody is not performing up to standard, especially they're a good performer and all of a sudden things aren't going too well. Is something going on at home? Is their mom sick? Right? Are they having financial problems? Or maybe something else that you don't know about, and you just can't ignore that. Right now, obviously, you don't go. This is where diplomacy and having these people skills is so important, right? I'm not going to come up to Jill and be like, "Hey, Jill, your work really sucks. What's going on?"
Well, you can, but that's not going to work well.
Right.
Yeah, not going to work. You're just going to think about how you would react to that, right? You're going to immediately put up defensive shields.
Yeah.
And
I think Oprah once said something that what everybody wants is like, do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are pretty basic elements that we can extend and share and invite others to be part of.
Yeah.
Because
and as leaders,
see them, hear them, let them know they matter.
Especially as leaders, right? Making sure that the people around you, whether it's your team or they're not on your team or they're your peers or they're your manager, right? Like as leaders, it's our responsibility to make sure that people feel that way. And if you see a shift, right, how can you help that person? And sometimes it's, okay, I need to step away and allow them because that's what they've asked me to do, or, that's how they best, get over things or work through things. But it's as a leader, like how do you recognize those shifts, acknowledge those shifts, and be an aid, right, to that? Because most of the time when there's a shift or there's something happening, when we think about conflict or tough situations, right, like it's that ego again, right? We make it about us. Oh, that person feels this way about me, or that person is doing this because of me, or whatever happens, we insert ourselves. When in reality, it probably has nothing to do with us.
Right. There's everybody out there has just as complex and varied a life as we do. Right? And everybody's going through all kinds of different stuff, and we have no idea.
Yes.
And I see Ryan's comment about a healthy food safety culture, keeping people involved, that it's easier said than done.
Yes.
I just want to pause on that for a moment, because I think the answer to that is yes, if we think it's going to be done in the way that we do work today. Because I think that's often where we think about like, well, I want this is the classic, right? I want a different outcome, but I'm not really shifting what I do.
Yes.
I mean, I've done this for years. Like, I think I should eat healthier, but right? Like, I don't. I want a different outcome, but I haven't truly shifted into what I consider the healthy eating patterns I want.
Right.
And I do the same things at work where I'm like, hey, my intent is I'm going to connect better with people. But am I connecting in a right way, a way that actually invites them in? Am I being open? Am I making time, or am I just hoping it will happen?
Yeah. Am I picking up on new tools, right? Like our old tools of doing work, like even within food safety and quality, just looking at ourselves, right? The tools that we have used in the past, they're not working when it comes to creating what we want to see in food safety culture. How do I use new tools? How do I learn about and then you master and use new tools to shift that culture? Because we doing the same thing over and over, right? We call that insanity. Like it's not going to change unless we, exactly what you're saying, Jill, we learn new tools, we step into different habits. Like if we're trying to eat healthy, but you keep grocery shopping the same way, probably not going to happen, right? You have to change those things, and change is hard.
It is. Ryan, totally agree, right? Like it is hard, which is why just the other day, we were talking about Kevin Oakes, who does culture renovation, said only 15% of companies that embark on culture change are actually successful. Only 15%.
Yeah.
Because change is hard. So we get it. But that's the whole, like, how bad do you want it? How far are you willing to go? How much are you willing to do it together? Do you have the right support?
Mm-hmm. And acknowledge that change is hard. I remember I came into a team and they needed to change. We needed to do a major shift. And I remember getting there, and the supervisor, there was one supervisor in particular, was like, "I'm so happy you're here. Like, we have so much to change." And I remember saying to her, I'm excited to be here, and I can't wait to see the impact of me being here and me working with each of you and just learning from you. And I said, but change is hard. And I need us to remember this joyful feeling that we have around change, because there's going to be a time that we're going to actually need to change. And we're going to want to say, "Oh, but we've done this for 5 years and nothing has ever happened." Or, I don't really want to change, or it's uncomfortable. We're going to get to that point. We just have to remember this change is good. Mm-hmm. And I remember talking to her once we started going through the change, and she's like, "You're right. This is hard, but I know that we need it because we had that conversation earlier."
Yeah.
And really, and what we're talking about here is utilizing these outside resources, your boss, your objectives, and things like this. This is a way to help see where you're at, because it's very hard for us to evaluate ourselves. To your point, if someone calls me up on the phone, and Gio was saying, said, "Okay, well, we're doing a survey on healthy habits. What am I going to tell them? Oh, yeah, I eat right all the time and I exercise every single day." And no, I don't. I'm lying, right? It's why we go to doctors. Right? The doctor is there to give you feedback on how you're doing. "Oh, Bryan, you're looking a little pudgy there, Bryan. What you doing?" Right? The doctor knows. He knows. Blood pressure's a little high, right? And yeah.
Well, and I think that brings up, often we like the idea of the change more than we like doing the change, right? So we like the idea, we even put plans in place, but then when it gets to doing, that's the hard work. And that's where that resilience comes in for, am I willing to do it different? So I think, Tim, when you say, why is it so small? I think that's why, because we get into the hard part, and that's new ground. Right. That's the basic. Our brains do not like to be uncomfortable, and we're asking it to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes.
So when that happens, and I think Roma too talked about, like, well, how do we do that? And that's someone, like, for us to make that change, if we're looking for everybody around us to be part of that change, maybe. But one thing we know for sure is that someone can be you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times we know, right? Like, just like Bryan, you saying the doctor knows, we know. Right. We also know, but we're not doing it because it's uncomfortable. We're retreating back, or we don't want the conflict, or we don't want to have those difficult conversations, or, and right. It can continue to pile up. But in reality, just like Jill said, it has to start with you. You have to make that step to do things differently. No matter the pushback, no matter the conversations. "Oh man, I'm gonna have to talk to everyone." Absolutely. You have to continue talking about it. You have to continue showcasing it. You have to continue doing it and being the example. And that's hard. Sometimes it's hard work, especially if you're the lone wolf of the pack, right? But you have to keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And have that consistency. So to Tim's point here, right? Change takes dedication and commitment, can kind of suck. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, big.
Yes. Right. But the result at the end, right? Like, think about the times that you led a change and it was hard, but at the end, everyone was like, "Wow, I'm so glad you did that. Like, look at our numbers," or "Look at the way everyone's feeling," or "We made our goal." Like that's so worth it. Yeah. That's worth going through the weeds, right? It's worth going through the, "Tia, what are you doing? Why are you doing it this way? Everyone's upset." Stay the course. Like, because at the end, it is like, right? It's like,
and that's an important point, Tia, because sometimes, and what you have to remember in quality, because we are setting the morality and the moral standard for the company, this can take a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Years. And we have to be consistent, and we have to keep saying that message. And one of the measures I always looked at for myself is that consistency. I want my team members to be able to come to me and ask me a question, and what I say, they already know what I'm going to say. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I knew you. And then, because if you're all over the board, right, that just causes confusion too. So you have to be very consistent and say, yep, here's the direction we're going. It's going to take us a while to get there. We're heading in the right direction. And again, tying it back to our topic for today, that's why we have objectives.
Yes, and
that's the direction we want the boat to go.
Right.
Yeah, and maybe thinking like, how can we use our review instead of, kind of, like you said, it shouldn't be a surprise, but can we even maybe repurpose some of that time to actually reflect? Because I think one thing, actually, once again, the other day we were working with a team and they were like, we have so much to do. Yes, you do. Okay, let's look back a year ago. Do you think you've made progress since then? Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. Yes, we see it here, but right, we forget.
Yeah.
We forget, even when you talk about that, like the company who wanted to triple their sales or in 3 years have whatever the growth was. Yeah. You could be in the middle of year 1 or year 2 and be like, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Maybe
like,
not.
No, we're not.
But you have to look back and go, what can we celebrate? Well, how far have we come? And it may not be exactly where you want to be, but those are the things that help carry us through to the next part to say, okay, we're on the right path.
Yes.
And so to your point, right, yeah, it's like, okay, no, we've doubled sales, right? We're already on our way. Did we think we could have done that? Well, no. And that moves you forward toward those objectives.
Yeah, it's important. It's very important.
Yep. And I think, like you said, because this food safety quality, we're often the ones like, we're not there. We still have this. We still have this gap. There's this risk. We have all these things to be done. Yeah. So true. But I think, I'd challenge everyone, like even look at what you're doing now. Like if you look back a year or 2 years ago, like what progress have you seen? How far have you actually come?
Yes.
Oh, and here's an interesting little sidebar so that company objective that I mentioned earlier in our talk, you'd never heard that before, but you remembered it, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Well, I mean, I think I think it even goes to like, is your vision, compelling? Right? Is it something that stands out in people's minds? Right? Is it bold enough? Right? To be like, wow, we want to triple sales. Like that seems so wild. Right? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that an acronym I've heard in the entrepreneur? BHAG. Big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yes. Yep. But what a great measuring stick, right? So when those other things come in, you're like, does it help me get this? The answer is no, if it's not a yes, it does, like a full yes, then the answer is maybe you should be working on it.
Right, exactly.
Even though you may be so pulled, and I did this many times leading teams, we're like, but we still need to do this. And that's okay. But now we've just fractured our workload capacity. So now we have less to do the things that people like we signed up that we have to do.
Right.
And so I think as a leader, you have to be really mindful and that there are going to be times, like we said, the suck is over here because we're not getting it done. But you still got to move forward.
Yeah, stay in focus.
And when you make space to get those done, then you probably have space for some of these other things.
Exactly. One thing that we talked about a little bit around, culture shifts, it takes time. Change takes time. Even with that vision, right, of tripling sales, like he had a realistic timeline to do it. And so one thing to think about as you're thinking about change, shifting culture, it can take a long time, and having a realistic timeline is so important. If you think you're going to shift people's behaviors in a year, that's not going to happen. If you have a team of 20 people, it's not going to happen. So now seeing an organization with 400 people or an organization with 10,000 people, that could take literally a decade to get you to where you want to be for food safety culture. And so having that realistic timeline is so important, because as you're reflecting, right, and you set an unrealistic timeline of, we're going to have this amazing culture in a year, even though you ask someone on the floor and they can't even define for you what their food safety checks are. Then when you get there in a year, you're going to say, well, we didn't make it. But that's because you didn't have a realistic timeline, not because your people can't get there.
Right.
Yep. So unfortunately, we're kind of getting toward the end of time here. And there's one other thing I wanted to bring up relative to this and get your opinions on this is don't ever forget that in an organization, there's a mechanism for doing this. And you may like the mechanism or you may hate the mechanism, but you have to operate in that. So for example, the notorious 5-point scale for grading people.
Yeah.
So a three is you're doing everything exactly right. You're meeting all your objectives. A 3 is a good thing. Okay. What's a 4? Well, a 4 is, boy, you're really going above and beyond, and you're knocking it out of the park, and your contribution is absolutely fantastic in the organization. Okay. What's a 5? Nobody gets a 5. If Jesus himself walked into the plant and began working on the line, he wouldn't get a 5. It's like, okay, well, then why do we have a 5? What's the point? And HR's job in this process, and never forget, HR works for the company. They're there for the company. And they're there to protect the company and make sure that everything is even and all these type of things that they do behind the scenes. Calibration of scores, because some people grade really, everybody gets 4, woo, we're awesome, right? And it's like everybody else is going, that's not true. Other people grade really, really hard. And so HR's job is to kind of bring that back into the norm and look at those things and make sure that scoring is fair across the company. And again, this is why having those clear, measurable, smart goals is so important, because now if HR comes back and unfairly starts challenging how you've scored your team, you can defend it.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I really do hope we move away from that type of scoring system, and whether it's the 1 to 5 or whether it's ranking people, there has got to be a better way to let people know how they're doing, and to, there has got to be a better way.
Yeah,
right?
Because in that system, really at the core of it, what it's doing is it's promoting competition between people.
Yeah.
Which, even if it seems subtle, because we're right, like we all rank high, I think, is part of what we've always been taught. Like, there has to be the bell curve. There have to be high performers. There have to be low performers. And how do we shift away from this, like, causing competition? Because then it's the I did this or I did that, or it just positions it different. So if we're looking for a culture of collaboration and high performing teams and all these other things, are the metrics that we're using to help do reviews contributing to that or drawing away from that?
Yeah. I think you're right, Jill. It's competition versus collaboration, right? And how you want your culture to be. It's just, there's so much to impact, kind of unpacked in that, in just the whole ranking or the whole scoring piece. And you can never be a 5. And if I'm a 5, that means someone has to be a 3 or someone has to be a 2. It's like, why should my performance, why is that impacting someone else's, and why someone else is impacting mine? Right? Like, especially when you don't have the same roles, you're responsible for different areas. It's not like we're all, Jill and myself, we're managing the exact same people. We're managing the exact same things. And it's like, okay, you go and do, and that's a competition, right? You go and do, and let's see who makes it first. And then whoever makes it first gets the 4, the other one gets a 3. I mean, there has to be a better way.
Yeah. Well said. And that's no fun. That's
friendly competition's okay, right? We all are influenced from different ways, but maybe exploring what are the ways to better influence our team members to help get the outcomes that we want. There are so many different ways to do that. So
yeah. And I'm competitive. I'm a competitive person, but that, I want to show that my team can make their goals, right? And I don't want my team making their goals impact your team, even if your team makes their goals, right? If everyone makes their goals, they're still trying to fit people in this bell curve. And and that's really when when it turns out to be a problem, right? When everyone seems to be high performing, you got to kind of force them into a bell curve.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
or into a ranking, depending on what you're doing.
Unfortunately, yeah. I mean, we could talk about this easily for another hour, and as Tim has reminded us, he has to drop off for another meeting. I'm sure other people do as well.
Yes.
So at Food Safety Catalyst, anything coming up you want to let people know about, or any courses or activities?
Well, gosh, we have some things that we're going to be unveiling later this spring, some new things to be part of join a different type of community. Gosh, one of the other things that we've been doing a lot of work in is sparking food safety culture workshops. Just a different way, because we don't do quizzes, we don't do training, but we really look at how do we get people engaged. So it's people focused, value based, coaching led, so that people are looking at culture and having different conversations so that they can move in different directions.
Yeah, and this workshop was created directly because people are looking at a different way of doing their food safety plans. Food safety culture plans. They're really looking at, okay, how do I build this food safety culture plan? What are we going to do over this year and years into the future? So these workshops are specifically for those organizations that's looking to build that culture plan.
With people.
Nice.
With people. Yeah.
And so if you would like to learn more about this, as you can see here, let me see if I can get my finger here right here. Wrong way. There we go. So everything's reversed on the camera. So there's Jill and Tia's email. Reach out to them. Ask them some questions. As you can tell from this chat, they're wonderful people and great to talk with. So always happy to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. We love your audience and being part of your audience too. So
me too. They're great. So that brings another food safety chat to a close. Hopefully we've been able to give you a couple of hints and tips here, right? And so part of this, I've always looked at things is if you can pull out one new little nugget and execute against that in some way, that's a win. So go through this and look at that information. And I put the post in here at the beginning of the string here instead of the end for my locals group. It's free. Join if you'd like. And I put up food safety information there, recalls and witty comments, hopefully, on the site. So let me know what you think. Join that. It's a lot of fun. And we will see you back here next Friday for the next food safety chat. So we do this every Friday on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter for 1 hour at this time. So 8 a.m. Mountain Time where I'm at, 9 a.m. where Jill is at, and 10 a.m. where Tia is at. So please enjoy your weekend. Have fun. And we'll see you back here next Friday, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.